I'm marrying him. You definitely have to come to our wedding.
After divorcing my husband due to his infidelity while serving in the U.S. Army, one day after work, I returned to my parents' house to find my in-laws visiting for some reason. Why are David and Helen here?
Oh, welcome home. There's something I want you to take a look at.
My dad said, handing me an envelope. I opened it to check. What is this? The sender was Layla, my ex-husband Jake's affair partner, and it was an invitation to their wedding. What on earth is she thinking? This isn't an invitation, it's a challenge. It makes no sense at all.
We got the same one from Jake.
It seems my in-laws received an invitation to and came over out of concern for me. My head was spinning with confusion at this totally unexpected situation, and as my parents watched, they became furious.
How dare they insult our daughter like this?
Exactly. What on earth are they thinking?
My parents were saying these things when suddenly, my dad noticed the sender's name and gave me a meaningful look. Thinking he might have a plan, I tilted my head in confusion, and then my parents said,
We're going to this wedding.
Yes, absolutely. And we're going to make a scene.
Even my usually gentle mother gave a sinister smile, which sent a chill down my spine. And so, this was the beginning of our revenge against the selfish man who had wronged me. My name is Catherine. I'm a 27-year-old teacher and part-time homemaker, living with my husband Jake. Jake and I had an arranged marriage, which is pretty rare these days. There's a reason for that, and I think I'll start by telling you how it all came about. After graduating from college, I got a job when I turned 23. I'll be working here starting today. It's a pleasure to meet you all. As I introduced myself, a woman who seemed to be around 50 years old approached me with a smile.
I'm going to be your mentor from now on. Looking forward to working with you.
Yes, I look forward to your guidance.
You don't need to be so nervous. Just take your time learning the job.
There were a few others who started at the same time as me, and apparently, it had already been decided which mentor would guide each of us. I remember feeling relieved that my mentor, Helen, had a very kind and cheerful demeanor. Helen's teaching was always clear and gentle. Although she could be strict at times, her guidance was so easy to follow, which helped me learn the ropes quickly.
Catherine, your lesson preparations are perfect, and your rapport with the students is spot on. Keep up the good work.
It's all thanks to your instruction, Helen. I really appreciate it.
At this rate, you might not even need me soon. That's a relief for me.
From the way Helen spoke, I could tell she appreciated my efforts at work, and I was very grateful for that. 3 years later, when I turned 26, Helen approached me with something to discuss.
Catherine, you're serious and adorable, and I really like you.
Thank you so much.
This is a personal question, but are you seeing anyone right now?
No, not at the moment. Why do you ask? I never expected to be asked something like that. Surprised by the unexpected question, I answered, and Helen, looking a little relieved, continued speaking.
That's great. You see, like I said earlier, I really like you, Catherine. So, I've been thinking about introducing you to my son.
Your son?
Yeah, his name's Jake. He's 29, so he's 3 years older than you. I think you two would make a great couple.
Oh, really? I was a bit flustered by this sudden conversation. caught off guard. I couldn't respond right away and was thinking about how to answer when Helen spoke again.
Of course, I'm not forcing you to date or marry him. If you don't like Jake, you can say no, and the same goes for him.
So, you're saying that we should meet up first, right?
Exactly. I'd like you two to meet once. After that, you can decide whatever feels right for both of you.
I understand. I'd be happy to meet him. And so, I agreed to meet Helen's son. The day of the meeting arrived. Nice to meet you. I'm Catherine, introduced by Helen.
I'm Jake. I'm sorry if my mom pushed you into this.
Oh, no, it's totally fine. My first impression of Jake, Helen's son, was that he seemed like a kind, serious young man, just like his mother. We talked about hobbies, how we spend our days off, and had fun chatting. Jake, you're really funny.
You're just as fun, Catherine. Plus, you're a great listener, which makes it easy to talk to you.
We really hit it off, and it didn't take long for our relationship to turn into something more. Then, 6 months after we started dating.
Catherine, will you marry me? I promise to make you happy for the rest of your life.
Jake, I'm so happy. Yes, I'll marry you. And just like that, I was set to marry Helen's son. From that moment on, Helen became my mother-in-law. Helen was thrilled about our marriage, and David, my father-in-law, praised Helen for bringing us together. At that time, I felt grateful to have such a good relationship with my in-laws and believed that marrying Jake was the right decision. A year passed, and our relationship was still good. We were living peacefully as a couple. And I even started thinking about having children. But one day, I noticed Jake's behavior starting to change.
Hey, Catherine. My new boss was saying that staying together all the time, just because you're married, can be suffocating.
Where is this coming from? You've never said anything like that before.
Well, hearing my boss talk about how he's still got freedom even after getting married, I guess I felt a little envious.
Really? But don't we already give each other plenty of space for personal time? Jake works for the US Army, and recently, he got a new boss. He had never said things like this before, so I wondered what kind of conversations he was having with his boss. Clearly, whatever those conversations were, they were influencing Jake's mindset. His behavior became more noticeable on his days off. We used to spend time together, but he started going out alone more often. Even if his boss said these things, how we spend time as a couple should have nothing to do with work. His boss's marriage is his boss's business. Ours is our own. I thought Jake understood that, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized something was off. Jake, why do you want to go out by yourself so often? Is there a reason you don't want to be with me? Suspicious of his actions, I couldn't help but ask. Jake, with an annoyed look, slowly started talking.
Ugh, stop nagging. Fine, I'll tell you. I've been going out alone because I didn't want you interfering with my dates.
Wait, dates? Are you saying you've been cheating on me?
Yeah, I have. Her name's Layla, my boss's daughter. She's younger and way hotter than you.
What? I can't believe this. Not only was I shocked by the fact that he was cheating, but also by how casually he confessed it, laughing all the while. But that wasn't the end of it.
Honestly, I have way more fun with Layla. You're not needed anymore. Here, sign the divorce papers. I'm out.
With that, Jake left the divorce papers on the table and walked out the door. This is horrible. I was devastated by everything, but I didn't want to create drama due to my job. So, I reluctantly decided to go through with the divorce. When I explained the situation and the reason for our divorce to my in-laws, they came to me, looking apologetic.
We're really sorry for what our foolish son did. I can't believe he would betray you like this.
I introduced you to, and because of that, I've caused you so much pain. I'm really sorry, Catherine.
David and Helen both deeply bowed their heads in apology. Despite her own shock, Helen seemed genuinely concerned for me and wanted to express her regret. You are not to blame. The fault lies entirely with Jake. I told them that and then returned to my parents' house.
Catherine, are you okay?
Not really, but David and Helen apologized to me, so.
I see. Well, for now, just take it easy and rest.
When I got home, my parents looked very worried and showed concern for me. I told them about Jake's parents, and since I wanted some space, they understood and quietly watched over me, respecting how I felt. Then, one day, when I came home from work like usual, I was met with a completely unexpected scene that shocked me. Why are David and Helen here? For some reason, my in-laws were sitting with my parents, discussing something.
Catherine, welcome home. I need you to take a look at this.
My dad handed me an envelope as soon as he saw me. What? What is this? The sender's name was Layla, the same woman who had stolen Jake away from me. To my shock, it was an invitation to their wedding.
Jake and I are getting married. We'd love for you to attend our wedding too, Catherine.
I couldn't believe they had sent something like this. As I stood there, stunned, my in-laws nodded as if to say they felt the same way and began to speak.
We got the same thing from Jake.
I just can't believe it. What on earth is going through his head?
It made sense for Jake's parents to receive an invitation. But given how dishonestly he had divorced me, the idea of him moving on so quickly to marry someone else must have shocked them as much as it did me. That's why they had come to my parents' house to tell us. None of it made any sense. This is impossible. As I stood there in a daze, my parents, watching my reaction, grew visibly angrier and finally raised their voices.
We've kept quiet until now, but we can't tolerate this any longer.
How dare they insult Catherine like this?
They were furious, but then I noticed my dad giving the sender's name on the envelope a meaningful glance. Since my dad also works in the US Army, like Jake. Because of that, I wondered if he might have come up with a plan. As I tilted my head in confusion, my parents made a decision.
We're going to that wedding.
Yes, we are. Don't worry, Catherine. We'll cause a scene if we have to.
As my dad spoke with confidence, even my usually gentle mom gave a sly smile. The truth is, my mom is a wrestler, and both her expression and words sent a chill down my spine, even as her daughter.
Catherine, we're sorry once again for our son's actions, but we won't let him get away with this.
Yes, we won't be satisfied until he's made full amends.
David, Helen, thank you. I could see that my in-laws were also deeply hurt by Jake's behavior. Feeling that way, I could tell they were acting with my best interests in mind, and I was grateful for it. I had no idea what would happen next, but I trusted they all had a plan. I decided to trust everyone. With that decision, I chose to wait and see how things would unfold. Finally, the day of the wedding arrived.
Hey, Catherine, can you see us?
Yeah, Dad, I can see you. Everything's good. My dad and I were on a video call, each from a different location. I was waiting at my parents' house while they were at the wedding venue. In other words, I was watching a live view of the wedding through the call.
This whole thing feels so strange.
My mom muttered, making sure I could clearly see the entire venue. The source of that strangeness became obvious when I looked closer. Most of the guests were Jake and Layla's colleagues, mainly military personnel, and there were very few relatives or friends in attendance.
The wedding's about to start. This is going to be great.
Yeah, it sure is.
But it didn't seem like the lack of close friends or family mattered much to Jake or Layla. They were smiling carelessly, as if nothing could touch them. As the formal ceremony progressed, the time came for the newlyweds to read their thank you letters to their parents.
Before that, we have something to say. We have a surprise for the bride and groom.
That's when David stepped up, quickly grabbing the microphone and solemnly announcing,
What? Dad? What's going on? A surprise.
Jake likely thought of David as a strict and serious person. Jake was surprised by David's unexpected words, but the real shock was yet to come.
We've asked some special guests to join us today to share a few words.
David said, gesturing toward the back of the room. At that moment, my parents quietly stood up. Jake seemed to notice them for the first time.
What? Why are Catherine's parents here?
He shouted, even more shocked than before. Ignoring Jake, my parents walked up to David, took the microphone, and began speaking.
We are the parents of Catherine, Jake's ex-wife. Today, we'd like to share something with all of you.
My father, speaking on behalf of both my parents, began recounting the events leading up to this moment.
Jake, who you see before you, abandoned Catherine for the sake of his own career, and now he's about to marry Layla, his boss's daughter, as if nothing ever happened.
The atmosphere in the room changed instantly, filled with whispers and murmurs of discontent.
What's going on? This isn't what we were told.
Voices like that were echoing from all around. It became clear that Jake had likely spread lies about the divorce. From the looks of it, he had painted me as the one at fault for the breakup. But now, the truth, that Jake had been the one cheating, was out. However, that wasn't the only reason my father was there. He continued speaking.
I, too, serve in the army, just like Jake and Layla's father. That's part of why I felt it was important for all of you to hear this today.
Wait, Catherine's dad is in the army?
Jake, Layla's father, and my father were all in the army. However, my father was in a different unit than the other two, so they didn't have any professional connection.
I've always treated my subordinates equally. That's why I never told Jake what my job was. I didn't want him to think it was a special connection.
For the first time, my father revealed why he had kept his profession hidden from Jake. As he continued explaining his military background, the audience seemed to realize that this wasn't just a personal matter. The room buzzed with growing tension.
The situation we're in today is partly due to Layla's father. He's been abusing his authority, making unreasonable demands on his subordinates.
That's not true. I've done nothing of the sort.
Layla's father, looking panicked, tried to deny the accusations. But his expression gave him away. and it was clear to everyone in the room that my father's words held weight.
I'm sure he's been treating his favorite subordinates kindly while making unjust demands on others. That's completely unacceptable as a leader.
My father didn't hold back, directly accusing Layla's father of misconduct. The weight of his words seemed to hit home. Layla's father found himself surrounded by angry guests. Meanwhile, Jake was being confronted by his colleagues, and the wedding descended into chaos.
Please stop. Why is this happening?
In what was supposed to be a moment of celebration, Jake and Layla's father were left hanging their heads in disbelief, overwhelmed by the disastrous turn of events. At that moment, David took the microphone again and began to speak.
Jake, what you did was inexcusable. The betrayal and dishonor you showed Catherine cannot be forgiven. I've decided to cut ties with you.
When Jake heard this, something seemed to snap inside him. He turned back to David, shouting furiously as he approached him.
Dad, you've got to be kidding me. You ruined my life.
This situation was entirely Jake's fault, yet he didn't realize it and started acting recklessly. To think he would try to attack his own father in front of everyone. How pathetic. I watched Jake's behavior with that thought in mind.
Stop right there.
It was my mom, the wrestler, who stepped in. With a swift and skilled move, she subdued Jake's outburst. Wow, Mom, you're amazing. The wedding turned into a complete mess, but watching it unfold left me feeling satisfied. A few days later, Jake's parents came to visit again, and we were having a discussion with my parents.
Hey, Catherine, don't mess with me.
Suddenly, Jake came rushing toward me, shouting, "What do you want now?"
What do I want? You set me up, that's what. My life's falling apart, and you're sitting here like nothing's wrong.
What are you talking about? Hearing Jake's furious words, I responded, feeling confused. That's when Jake started explaining everything that had happened. Apparently, he and Layla's father had been called in by high-ranking military officials and harshly interrogated. They were now facing consequences for their actions, and Jake was convinced I had orchestrated the whole thing to ruin him. I didn't do anything. The real problem is that you cheated on me. Hearing this, Jake finally began explaining why he had cheated.
It's because you were always working. You never had time for me. You didn't care about me.
That was such a childish reason. I never imagined being cheated on for such a ridiculous excuse and then having the blame shifted onto me. I couldn't believe that the person I had once cared for could be so selfish. Though I felt some disappointment, by this point, I was also completely over it. Jake, I don't want to see you again, but don't forget to pay the alimony. When I coldly said that, Jake seemed to lose his temper again.
Don't you dare get cocky with me.
It seemed he had completely forgotten about my mom's skills from a few days ago.
Enough.
My mom shouted, once again stepping in to restrain him.
I'm so sorry for all the trouble our foolish son has caused.
We're so ashamed.
With that, Jake's parents, looking exasperated, dragged him away. Later, my dad told me what happened to Jake and Layla's father.
After all that, the military officials thanked me for speaking out about Jake and Layla's father.
Really? So, they really were involved in some serious issues.
Exactly. They were eventually forced to leave the army.
Wow, that's brutal. In any line of work, Integrity matters. Jake and Layla's father completely lacked that integrity. That's why being discharged from the army was a consequence of their own actions, and there's no room for sympathy. One day, while I was out with my family, I saw Layla looking completely defeated. She spotted me and, glaring, began to approach.
This is all your fault.
She must have seen my picture while dating Jake. Otherwise, how would she know I was his wife? What do you mean, our fault?
It's because you exposed Jake and my dad. That's why I couldn't marry Jake. And now my dad's lost his job. My life is ruined.
This was all brought on by Jake and Layla's father, so blaming us is completely misplaced. I couldn't help but feel exasperated, wondering if two people so alike were about to marry each other. I decided I didn't want to deal with this anymore and started to walk away, but Layla grabbed my arm.
Hey, Layla, enough of this nonsense. How about you pay me back the money you owe?
Suddenly, a tough-looking man spoke to Layla, and I couldn't help but be surprised.
Why are you here? Just give me a little more time. My new guy will pay it off, I swear.
New guy? When I tilted my head at Layla's words, the man did the same and began speaking in a low voice.
New guy. I've seen you with a few men, but none of them look the same.
Well, I mean...
Clearly intimidated by the man, Layla stammered, unable to explain herself. From the way things looked, the man was a debt collector, and it seemed Layla had been playing around with multiple men, not just Jake. But that's none of my business. Soon enough, not only Jake and her father, but Layla herself would be left to deal with the consequences of their actions. Later, I continued working at the same school as Helen, but when the new school year started, I received a transfer offer.
I'll miss working with you, Catherine, but I know you'll do great wherever you go. Just take care of yourself, okay?
Thank you so much, Helen. I felt a little sad about no longer working with Helen. At the same time, I made a decision. Mom, Dad, I've been offered a transfer next school year, and I'm thinking it's a good time to live on my own.
Oh, really? I'm sure you'll be fine, Catherine.
I agree, but be sure to take care of yourself and let us know if you need anything.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. My parents understood and supported my decision, and I felt the warmth of their unconditional love in their words. To honor their support, I promised myself that I would work hard to build a healthy and happy life from here on out.